There were 28 people on a ship in the Antarctic Ocean, but their ship was stuck in millions of tons of ice. They had been stuck in the same spot for 7 months. One night, they suddenly heard a loud noise from beneath the ship, and the ship tilted to one side. It felt like something was trying to push the ship from below with great force. What happened next was beyond anything they could have imagined. Once again, welcome to the Antarctic Ocean, where the waves are as tall as buildings, winds blow at 100 kilometers per hour, and the water temperature is freezing. Human blood starts to freeze in this ocean. Traveling here is like hugging death itself. Even if you survive the cold and the waves, giant chunks of ice as big as mountains can easily crush a ship. But 111 years ago, when technology wasn't advanced and ships were nowhere near as strong, a group of 28 people got stuck in this terrifying sea. Under the open sky, they didn't spend just a few weeks or months, but an astonishing full 2 years. All around them was nothing but ice, raging winds, a shortage of food and water, and no way to call for help. This is a survival story that the world calls the greatest survival story of all time. The hero of this story is Sir Ernest Shackleton, an explorer whose mission was to test the limits of human endurance. That's why he named his ship Endurance. He had undertaken many dangerous missions in his life. In 1901, he was part of a mission to reach Antarctica, but had to turn back 750 kilometers short. In 1907, he tried again, but had to stop just 150 kilometers before the goal. They had to turn back. But this time in 1914, their plan wasn't just to reach Antarctica. They aimed to cross the entire continent on foot. The reason? Sir Ernest Shackleton wanted to do something no one had ever done before. This mission was called the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition, and since it was incredibly dangerous, no one was willing to sign up. The first challenge for Sir Ernest was finding a crew for the expedition. That's when he placed an advertisement in the Times. The ad was published in the newspaper. Keep in mind, this wasn't just any ordinary tour operator's advertisement. It started with the words, "Man wanted for hazardous journey." It clearly stated that the pay was very low, the cold would be deadly, they'd have to stay in darkness for months, face dangers every moment, and there was no guarantee of returning safely. Sir Ernest wanted to attract people who weren't afraid of risks. Soon he hired a group of 27 men. Sir Ernest had planned this mission for 4 years. But as the time got closer, their expedition dreams started to fade. That's because World War I had already broken out. Everyone thought the expedition was probably going to get canceled. But Britain, which had already declared war itself, gave the green light for the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. For this mission, they needed a super strong ship that could cut through the ice-covered Antarctic Ocean. But this wasn't just any ship that could be built easily. Luckily, there was already a ship designed to navigate the Arctic, owned by a Norwegian company. This ship was originally built for another explorer who wanted to use it to take the then elite class on polar bear hunts. But his business model flopped. Sir Ernest bought the ship and named it Endurance. Endurance was specially made from thick American oak, and its design was such that the wood could withstand the immense pressure of the ice. It was a hybrid ship, equipped with both sails and an engine. Finally, the day Sir Ernest had been waiting for all these years arrived. On August 8, 1914, Endurance started their journey from the English town of Blenheim. For the next 4 months, they traveled across the Atlantic Ocean. First, they went to Argentina. Then from there, they headed to South Georgia Island. And after finalizing the last preparations there, on December 5, 1914, they set the ship's course towards the Weddell Sea in the Antarctic Ocean. The Endurance had 28 people on board, along with 50 big sled dogs. These dogs were meant to help pull equipment and supplies through the Antarctic ice. The journey lasted 46 days, and now they were just a day away from reaching the Antarctic coast. They were on their way. But then, on January 18, 1915, their first big problem hit. What happened was that the layers of ice over the Weddell Sea kept getting thicker and thicker, eventually reaching about 18 feet thick at one point. Endurance just didn't have the strength to break through it and move forward. In some spots, the ice was so weak that even starting to walk across it wasn't possible. Endurance got stuck in the ice roughly 130 kilometers short of their destination at Vassal Bay. At first, they thought it was just a normal delay, but in reality, it was the biggest problem on the way to the Antarctic expedition turned out to be this. After days of continuous efforts, they decided to manually push the 300-ton ship forward. For the next 2 days straight, the crew worked on cutting through the ice and making a path, completely exhausted. But the task was even tougher than they had imagined. After many days of hard work, they managed to move the ship only about 300 meters. After that, the Endurance got stuck again. After a month of trying to free the ship, finally on February 14, 1915, Sir Ernest lost hope. He decided to just let the ship drift naturally with the ice. Maybe once winter passed, the ice would break on its own. Meanwhile, the Endurance was acting like a winter station. The crew started going about their daily routines, but the only difference was that the ship was stuck in one place. The crew's spirit was high, and Sir Ernest had strict discipline on board. They kept themselves busy all day by having discussions, playing soccer, cutting each other's hair, and spending time cooking. Just that. They waited, hoping that one day the ice would break and give them a way forward or backward. The crew spent their days in endurance, growing closer and closer to each other. They even started forming emotional bonds with the animals. Everyone hoped that one day they'd reach some kind of civilization. But maybe nature had other plans. In April 1915, the ice did start to break, but because of increasing pressure, the layers of ice began to pile up on each other, leading to a totally unexpected event. Millions of tons of compressed ice crushed down on the Endurance too. They started putting on pressure. At this point, the most important thing was to free the ship from the ice's grip, so everyone worked together to clear the ice. After a few weeks of hard work, that problem was resolved, but the danger was still there. On the night of July 14, 1915, suddenly there was a loud noise from beneath the ship, and the Endurance tilted to one side. No one knew what had happened. Was it a whale hitting the ship or something else? Somehow the night passed, but when morning came, what they saw was unbelievable. The compressed layers of ice not only had it tilted to one side, but the ship's rudder, which was used to steer it, was completely broken. The crew of the Endurance had been stuck here for 7 months, at least 2,000 kilometers away from any human settlement. No contact with anyone, no hope of help. If they had any hope at all, it was from Sir Ernest Shackleton. On October 18, 1915, the dream of the Imperial Trans-Antarctic expedition was shattered. The crew had been trapped in the same spot for 9 months. Then one night, suddenly, a wave of pressure hit, causing the Endurance ship tilted 30 degrees to one side. Now the danger of the ship leaking was looming over their heads. Water started seeping in through cracks in a few places. The entire crew worked through the night to prevent water from flooding inside. But the support over their heads was probably only going to last so long. On October 27, 1915, Sir Ernest Shackleton gave the order to abandon the ship, because that was the only way to save their lives now. They took out all the essential supplies, animals, food and drink, lifeboats, beds, everything. And now the whole crew was out on the ice, forced to come under the open sky on a sheet. The ship they had relied on for months had now broken apart under the pressure of the ice right in front of everyone and was slowly sinking underwater. Everyone kept wondering, how long could they keep waiting, floating on the ice? Sir Ernest Shackleton decided that staying there wasn't safe. He knew about an island called Paulet, 550 kilometers away, where there used to be shelter and supplies. But reaching there with just 3 lifeboats wasn't going to be enough because ice can break a huge ship like that, so what chance did those lifeboats have? So they decided to make their way to this island on foot. They set off towards Paulet Island, which was the most dangerous part of their adventure. For the next 6 months, the crew faced deadly dangers. The ice sheets they camped on would either crack open or start drifting with the water. Luckily, these ice sheets were slowly drifting right towards Paulet Island. So Sir Ernest decided they would just float along on the ice sheets themselves. They were about to reach Paulet Island. By then, their food and water had run out. On the floating ice sheet-like island, they tried to hunt whatever they could find, like penguins and seals. It had been 13 months since they set off in February 1916. Their condition had worsened to the point where they were surviving on just 1 biscuit a day. Waiting for Paulet Island until the next month, Things got so bad they had to kill their dogs. After that, they managed to get by for a few more days. They were still hoping to reach Pollitt Island. They hoped to find some supplies once they got there. But the floating island they were on suddenly changed direction, heading towards Elephant Island instead of Pollitt Island. For the next several days, there were fierce storms at sea. The temperature dropped to -20 degrees Celsius, and many crew members started getting frostbite. Their faces and tongues were so numb that swallowing became difficult. Before they knew it, April 1916 had arrived. Using broken sheets of ice as support, they somehow managed to reach Elephant Island. It was the first time in 16 months that they had set foot on solid ground. They were touching the shore. On Elephant Island, they finally got a breath of relief, but the island was completely barren and staying there for long wasn't possible, especially after the food supplies ran out. There was only one hope: South Georgia Island, 1,300 kilometers away. Sir Ernest Shackleton decided to take on this suicidal mission to reach South Georgia Island in a lifeboat. He picked a few men from the crew, and on April 24, 1916, they set off from Elephant Island towards South Georgia Island. This route, it's considered one of the most dangerous sea routes in the world. They faced waves as high as 90 feet. The freezing cold was so intense that every part of their body started to freeze. On top of all these challenges, they had to make this journey without GPS or a compass, relying only on the stars and the sun. Despite giving it their all every day, they couldn't cover more than 80 kilometers. After 16 days on May 10, 1916, Sir Ernest Shackleton and 5 crew members finally made it to South Georgia Island. But here, there was a problem. They had ended up on the wrong side of South Georgia Island. In front of them stood a 4,000-foot mountain. After 36 hours of non-stop climbing, they finally made it to the other side where the whaling station was. Shackleton was in such bad shape that the people at the whaling station didn't even recognize him. No one could believe that Sir Ernest, who had left almost a year and a half ago, had arrived there like this. After staying on South Georgia for 3 days, Sir Ernest set off again toward Elephant Island, where he had left 22 men in terrible condition. They had set out and tried several times unsuccessfully to reach Elephant Island. Finally, on August 30th, 1916, they spotted smoke rising from Elephant Island in the distance. It was a signal fire. Sir Ernest didn't know how many of his men were still alive, but as they got closer, to his surprise, he found the entire crew on Elephant Island safe and sound. They had first left England on August 8, 1914. After more than 2 years and 22 days, he managed to bring his whole team back home safe, even though he never completed his original mission. He had tried twice before to reach the South Pole, and even got stuck just 120 kilometers short during the Imperial Trans-Antarctic expedition. But his survival story brought him a kind of fame that maybe even completing the mission wouldn't have. Then, 107 years later in 2022, the Endurance was finally found on the floor of the Antarctic Ocean. It's still perfectly preserved, about 3,000 meters down, and you can even clearly read the name written on it. Hopefully, you all will definitely like and share this TV video a lot. Thanks so much for all your loving comments. See you in the next awesome video.